First of all, a very good morning, and especially also a very warm welcome to our panelists. However, still not complete. We are missing Björn Kunter from Lovestorm, and unfortunately, we haven't got any contact to Shatha Sheikh Youssef from Haifa yet. I assume that the current situation in Israel and Palestine may be the background that she is not in yet. I hope she is doing well and everything is okay out there in Haifa. Before we start, I would like to make a few technical comments so that we can run the session smoothly. For reasons of the bandwidth, we request you to switch off your microphone and your camera. Otherwise, the server capacity, except of the panelists, of course. Otherwise, the server capacity could not suffice. So that would be a first requirement for a smooth session. Later on, towards the end of the discussion, we will unlock cameras and microphones so you can join in our discussion. However, the chat function is open all the time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type in your questions. We will monitor this and collect this, and towards the end, we will come back to these questions. Secondly, you see this slide here, challenges for preventing youth violence in cyberspace. We will not have a formal presentation this morning. So if you switch on the bar at the upper right corner of this slide, you could minimize it and have the pictures a bit enlarged. And in case that we will use this, you can push the button in the lower right corner to enlarge the slide. Then there is one caveat that I have to mention. The entire session will be recorded. That means everything which is on picture or on sound will be recorded. The chat is off the record, literally. So if you do not want to be recorded, at the very end, you would have to leave the session or keep quiet. So, but on the other hand, the session will then, after some editing, will be available on the website of the Prevention Day. And sometime in autumn, it will be even on the YouTube channel of the Prevention Day. So you can rehearse the session if you like. These are the few technical rules of the game, so to speak. And I thank you very much for attending our session this morning, and I think we can start. I have only dim hope that we will be able to welcome Shatha At least we haven't heard anything of her. Lisa, if there is anything coming in, just let us know whether we'll make her join the session. Even without the Corona-Pandemie and without the social distancing and the separation and quarantine, home office and video conferences, we actually can see and feel the relevance of digital communication, however imperfect as we see this morning. They have become part and parcel of our daily life, and they keep our communication afloat and shape our daily life, the positive as well as to the negative. As much as we depend on these channels to stay in contact with family, with friends and colleagues, as much social media are used with an adverse and even hostile intention very often. They become means of interference and offenses and harassment. And what is happening in the virtual, in the digital world, represented only by bits and bytes, has tangible impact on us and our daily life, emotionally, physically, and socially. So social media are part of the real world. And how can we deal with these challenges? Today we have gathered 3 persons looking at this phenomenon from very different angles. Actually, only 2 because Shatha is not with us at the moment. And they look at it in terms of content and strategy very differently, but also in terms of geography and context. Farthest away and always 3.5 hours ahead of us here in Germany is Joanna Atkinson. Joanna, can you lift your hand? She is based in Colombo in Sri Lanka and working in a project supporting reconciliation processes in Sri Lanka. And this project is running an Instagram and a Facebook site to facilitate peaceful and reconciliatory communication among the various ethnic groups in her country. Actually, we would have liked to welcome Shatha Sheikh Youssef. She is based in Haifa, in Israel. She is working for Hamle, the Arab Institute of Advancement. Unfortunately, she cannot make it this morning. We don't know exactly what the reasons are, but as I said, it's quite imaginable that the current conflict and the escalation of the violence in Israel and Palestine is the reason for her absence. So we wish her well, that everything is fine there in Haifa. And last but not least, unfortunately we cannot see him, but we can hear him, this Björn Kunter. Björn Kunter is working with LoveStorm, an organization on initiative based near Hanover. And LoveStorm is working on empowering young people, but also institutions, parents, schools, to deal with the hateful offenses and bullying that occur in social media. This morning we will speak about these experiences in the various countries, how people experience it, what strategies they have developed, what action they have taken to counter the negative impact, and what can be done, actually, that's the center, to strengthen people to be self-assertive and courageous in countering offenses. In short, what can we do? And with the different perspectives that we have gathered today, what can we learn from each other in countering the negative impact? And after all, social media are a global phenomenon. They're connecting us across the border, across countries. So it's worthwhile and necessary that we also look at it across borders and across our own limitations. Having said this, I would like to start with our discussion and turn to the farthest away point, to Sri Lanka. Joanna, again, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us from Colombo. SRP, the support to reconciliation processes in Sri Lanka, is dedicated to support effective cooperation and communication among the various actors in the Sri Lankan society. What actually are you doing? What are the components of what you are doing? And what approaches actually do you have in performing and fulfilling your task and your vision? Can you elaborate a bit?
Yes, thanks, Klaus, and thanks, Lisa. And good morning again to everyone in the room, and afternoon from over here in Sri Lanka. So yes, as Klaus said, I'm part of the communication and policy team for strengthening reconciliation processes in Sri Lanka. The program is implemented by GIZ and co-financed by the European Union and the German Foreign Office. So just to give you a bit of background on what the program is and how it works, we work with government, non-government, and grassroots entities in 7 different fields of action, which are central to peace building and reconciliation processes in Sri Lanka. So these 7 fields are M&E, monitoring and evaluation, public institutional development, communication and policy, history, arts and culture, psychosocial support, and language. So our approach to reconciliation and peace building is a holistic one, and it's based on the prevention or non-recurrence pillar of the transitional justice process. So it is set in the post-war context of Sri Lanka. So this 4-year program began implementation in 2018, which was quite a pivotal year for social media in Sri Lanka. Because when we started implementing towards the end of the year, the country was just coming out of violent riots that had taken place a few months prior. And these riots started, or the violence was incited online, on Facebook specifically, and had offline effects. So social media was actually not in our project's original description of action, but because of our team's context analysis of the socio-political role that social media has played and continues to play in Sri Lanka's post-war context and in this field of reconciliation between different ethnic and religious communities, social media slowly but surely became a key area of focus for the program. So I will explain to you a bit about how we work with social media. So we have what we like to call a 3-pronged approach that we developed as part of our communication strategy. So one aspect or one prong is to unpack or deconstruct reconciliation and peace building through the program's pages. So we have, as Klaus said, a Facebook page and an Instagram page, and I will share the links in the chat so you can take a look at them at some point. So we chose Facebook because in Sri Lanka, Facebook has the highest number of users of any social media platform. And we chose Instagram because of its growing global outreach and its high popularity among urban youth, brands, entrepreneurs, community-driven initiatives, and as a space for visual storytelling. And as we continue this conversation, I will illustrate why these areas and these target groups are relevant to promoting reconciliation and peace building in Sri Lanka. Also, overall, the highest number of social media users in the country is recorded in the 18 to 34 age bracket. So we are essentially dealing with youth as our largest and key target group. So that is one aspect. And then the second aspect is community-owned, user-generated content and campaigns. which we roll out with partners. So as I said, the program works through partnerships in different sectors, and we do the same in the communication and policy component. So we have partnerships with INGOs and grassroots organizations, and through them, we have user-generated content. So there are several Facebook pages that are run by the users themselves. So SRP's name, the commissioners' names are not on the page. This is purely owned by the community of users, and the content is produced by them as well. And I will share these links also. The third aspect is research and monitoring and evaluation. So as we all know, contexts evolve, issues are evolving, and social media is always evolving. It's never static. So research, monitoring, and evaluation is essential if we are to design interventions that are relevant and timely and meet needs, basically. And that research has to be ongoing. And when we got into this field, we found that there was actually a lack of research. So again, through partnerships, we have published research, and we are also supporting local level research on trends related to hate speech and incitement to violence. So those as well I will illustrate as the conversation continues. Thank you. Klaus, you're muted.
You're muted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Joanna. To go a bit deeper, so far, what is the response from your target group? How is it received, and how is the ownership?
Okay, so this as well, I will divide my responses. So in terms of the program pages on Facebook and Instagram, the response in terms of followers, likes, and engagement was a slow build-up. So it's been a journey, really, a journey of understanding our audience and how we can engage them in this conversation on peace building and reconciliation, and also a journey of experimenting and learning as we go. So right now we have over 2,500 followers on Facebook. On Instagram, we have 600. And that these numbers are small, some would say, but we have seen niche engagement, and we have also seen meaningful engagement. So we do know that our target groups are, some are within what we call the echo chamber. So they are actors within the development sector, because we also want to forge networks and work together rather than in silos, because a collaborative effort is needed in order to address this issue of peace building and reconciliation. So from those actors within the community, we've had a positive response. And then when we consider youth and people outside of the peace building sector, we have seen really a significant response. I mean, one example is last year and also going into this year with the COVID pandemic, we couldn't have activities as planned in a physical sense. So that made it really challenging, because we couldn't, for instance, run a campaign on our film festival in a university. Or our traveling museum, which was outside of Colombo. So there would be an offline and an online engagement, but now audiences were strictly online. So we started doing Instagram lives and Facebook lives, and we structured it differently to a webinar, because we observed that everyone was doing webinars, and we could all personally identify with the screen fatigue of sitting and listening. So we structured it in such a way that the conversation was not experts talking about a particular topic, but human beings sharing their personal perspectives and experiences. And we observed people from the private sector, university students, civil society activists, and also a lot of people connected to government who would normally not participate in such forums, join these forums and give us positive feedback, ask questions. So we didn't have any negative backlash, actually. So that's kind of how I would describe the response from our target groups. It has been positive. There have been questions which have given us opportunity for dialogue. And there has also been a response of liking and sharing, which is engagement as well, even though there's no sort of exchange. And then in terms of our community-driven user-generated content, there we've been working purely with youth all over Sri Lanka, and who have really not been exposed to this peace building process and who were actually born after the war. And we found through our work with universities that the younger generation are really not aware of conflict dynamics or what the root causes of conflict were. So engaging them through these initiatives and using approaches like games, where with one of our initiatives, we rolled out what's called a scavenger hunt. So it's kind of like a treasure hunt, but the young people are grouped with others they've never met before from different parts of the country and given sort of a quest and a list of tasks that relate to culture and religious aspects that are not from within their community. So that way they were exposed to things that they hadn't been exposed to before. And then through this competition, they went on to produce content for this social media page. And one example, one really great example was in 2019, soon after the Easter attacks, when there was violence towards Muslims in the country. Some of the youth from this initiative actually produced a video within their community, highlighting how they all came together to protect each other and to protect their Muslim neighbors and friends. And this video went viral on social media at a time when hate speech was rife. And not only on the partners platform, but also on our platform, which we really didn't expect. So the response has been good. But we've also seen negative commentary on that particular page, the page that is community owned. Some of it was very harsh. It could also be defined as hate speech. And we had to work with the partner to develop risk mitigation strategies and address that. But that is also part of the conversation, because it can't always be positive. And if we don't engage the haters, then we're not going to be reaching the unreached.
We want to speak about how to counter this later on. But first, let's jump back to Germany and listen to Björn. Björn Kunter is working with LabStorm and is a trainer for social media empowerment. Björn, how does this resonate to what you are doing in Germany in terms of empowerment with young people and with teachers, parents? But as I understood, you're also working with institutions who are dealing with the manifestations of hate speech and violence on the social media.
Hi. Yes, thank you, Klaus. And thank you for, and sorry for all that. Well, that I cannot share more than just a picture of myself. So I will go. You can't hear me?
Yes, very good.
Okay, good. Sorry. Yeah. So I will go back to hope to be as interesting as the radio moderators in my past and childhood. And yes, so going back to the question, LabStorm is a young initiative. We were just founded in 2017. The platform is working since 2018, so just like 3 years. And what we mainly do are trainings. So what we do is we offer trainings, and coming back from our background in I'd say training for civil courage or for how to interact in violent situations, with Germany having a unfortunate history of confrontation with right-wing street violence, also in the 90s and the 2000 years mainly. A period which some people in the East refer as the baseball cup years. And at that time, we developed the idea of trainings, how to interact when you are a witness of violence. And we took this and now say, well, if you're a witness of violence online, so what do you do? Because this problem is the same. We have a lot of witnesses. We have a lot of people watching. And if you look at, if you're closer, then if you look at if you have a closer look, then it means that violence, the impact of violence online, it's not the baseball cup hitting you. It is not the pain of the physical pain, but the pain is very much linked to the fact that you know all the other people are watching and they are reading it. And what do they now think about me? What do my friends think about me? So the violence, the pain of online hate has a lot to do with others not coming back to you, not coming to your help. Because then this is what I say is the most important outcome of our observations, I'd say, with a lot of participants and victims or targets of online hate. The pain is a social pain, and it's based on the fact that too few people are helping and showing solidarity and showing that the haters are just the haters are just the haters, but they are just they are just a few people. In some cases they're organized, in some cases they're not organized. The important thing is that you as a witness or you as a target, that you don't look back and give or would set counter speech, or that you react.
Okay, thank you. Your organization is called Lovestorm.
Mm-hmm.
And Lovestorm is the opposite of shitstorm. So how often actually have you launched Lovestorms? Or is this something that belongs to your strategy, that you as an organization support or even launch yourself Lovestorms in case of such violent behavior on the social media?
Well, we call ourselves a training and action platform. And I have to admit that our main focus is training work. So what we did, we started as having an action platform where people could report, okay, so I'm targeted, this happened, or I've seen this, maybe other Lovestormers could help and join this. So this is part of our strategy to have something like like I'd say a first aid emergency response on if people are attacked. What we found out is in Germany we do have one experience with a large counter speech group called I Am Here, also existing in some other countries, coming from Sweden from the beginning. And what they did is they organized mass counter speech in a way under very popular discussions on Facebook. And what we are doing is not the same, because we are organizing more or less, it's not like 100 people coming, but it's just like 2 or 3 or 5 people coming. But we found this being one of the important factors to help people to targets. They report us. We had a case of a woman who was attacked, and she wrote us later, well, there were just a handful of tweets coming for my help, but these tweets may help me to come out of the moment of shock. They helped me to recover and then to address the attacker by myself. We didn't come to an agreement with the attacker and I, but nevertheless we could talk again. And this is something that really helps this shows that if you are not alone confronted with whatever violence you're confronted with, then that will help you to survive it, and that will help you to stand through it. So we said one of our slogans is "Never alone against hate speech." I think that's crucial.
So when I understand you correctly, there is this empowerment factor or the empowerment part of your activities, but there is also something like a healing effort in what you do. Is it because you very vividly described that the emotional pain, the shame, and so that this is the main consequences of what is occurring on the social media. So does Lovestorm also encourage a kind of healing support by people?
Well, I'd be cautiously saying because we're just like first aid. We can offer some first aid, but this is not. We don't have the psychologist or something.
Okay.
Last year we were just 2 people, so 2 persons were working in one office. Now we have 5, but still, the thing is, what I think about healing hate is what we tell them, people who are targeted. The first thing is, remember, in most cases, it has nothing to do with yourself. You have to see that especially if you're talking about anonymous hate of somebody commenting that you don't know, or anyway, this hate has nothing to do with yourself. Maybe it has something to do with the ex-girlfriend of the hater, or with the mother of the hater, or with the bad teacher, but it has nothing to do with yourself. Yeah. So that is something that most people find very, very helpful to remember. Okay, this is just this is just reacting on whatever, and it's just an incident that I'm targeted.
Yeah, interesting. Joanna, how do you deal with offenses? I mean, if you are encouraging people to posting on the platforms, and you already mentioned that there is not only positive response to it, but there are negative responses to be very prudent. How do you deal with this? You as an organization, but also in terms of support of those who are active on Instagram or on the platforms.
Okay, so first I would clarify that the hate speech that we deal with through SRP is driven by racism, negative ethno-religious stereotyping, and also targeting minorities in the country, ethnic minorities. So it is different in that sense to the kind of hate that Lovestorm is addressing. So we have several strategies in place. So first of all, with the program pages, that is SRP's Facebook and Instagram page, in our communication strategy, we have a risk mitigation strategy. that has steps in terms of, okay, if we have a negative comment, depending on the content of the comment, we will write to the user and we will take it down, as in delete it from the page. This has not happened yet on our platforms. And also we have this strategy of when we set up the pages, we looked at the visual branding of the pages as a risk mitigation strategy. Because also around this process of reconciliation and peace building in Sri Lanka, there is a perception, a negative perception towards international involvement in these processes related to the UNHCR process and in general throughout the conflict, this involvement of international NGOs. And so because SRP has international commissioners, and we were aware of this perception, we developed a logo or a symbol for the project that depicted all ethnicities, or that spoke to the diversity of Sri Lanka. Because we wanted our target groups to understand that while this program is internationally funded, it is very much a national program, and it is it needs to be owned by those of us in Sri Lanka who are part of this process. So our key message really is everyone has a role to play in reconciliation and peace building. So this logo took the forefront of the branding, and the commissioners' logos are placed alongside it. So we acknowledge the support, and we explain their involvement in the About Us section of the page, so that anyone looking at the page doesn't immediately think, oh, it's a foreign-funded program, and then they switch off. But they understand the thinking behind it and engage with it in a meaningful and wise way. So we've done that for both our pages. And we've also had questions around it, and we really appreciate the questions, because then it gives us an opportunity to explain how this program works. And then when it comes to our partner initiatives, where there are no logos and where there is more space for hate speech, which we did see specifically after the Easter Sunday attacks, there we had to work with our partners on how to respond. So while our strategy as a program was different, because it was a partnership, and because we had to respect the fact that this was a user-generated, user-owned community, we had to work together to develop a strategy. And that strategy was actually to not respond to some of the very negative and hateful comments, because then you are, and it's always a matter of perception, and being on social media is never risk-free. And this is also why there is a very fine line, or it's a double-edged sword really, between hate speech and free speech, because the haters, as we perceive them, were speaking their minds, but also they were not speaking it in a very respectful way. So what our partner advised us was that there was no value in responding, because they are not there to have a dialogue or to deepen the conversation. They're just there to hate. So the comments were there. And actually what was beautiful was the community that posts content did respond to some of it by posting more positive content and more supportive content towards the minorities who were being targeted. So that in itself was a counter. And really, Klaus, I would say our overarching strategy to respond to hate has been to increase positive content as a combat or a counter to the negative content. Because while you can argue in some situations, in others you just can't, because they're not ready to hear your point of view. So increasing positive content and increasing engagement around, when I say positive, I mean content that is pro-peace, or content that deepens a conversation, or content that exposes negative stereotyping, that explains the root causes of a conflict. That's what I mean by positive. So not just not just soft stuff, but stuff that really gives rise to a conversation, increasing that kind of content and shifting the conversation really towards that, then reduces the engagement around hateful content. And we actually have the numbers to prove quantitatively that positive content outweighed negative content soon after the Easter attacks on social media, which wasn't visibly apparent, but that is why research and monitoring is so important, because if you don't know the numbers, you really don't know the impact of what you're doing, and it's only what you see. And there are billions of users on social media, and content changes within seconds. So we're constantly engaging. And that's why we need to do the research and know the numbers, so that it's not only what we see on the surface of a platform.
Joanna, you're saying it's a fine line that you are treating between hate speech and freedom. And therefore the question to both of you, to Joanna and Björn, do we need some sort of protective measure? Do we need a railing where we can touch so we don't fall off the fine line? What kind of rules do we need, or do we even need regulation by the lawmakers? Björn, what's your opinion on this? Yeah, can you hear?
Yeah. Just had to find the button. Sorry. Okay, Klaus, I will answer your question first, and then I would also say there's a question in the chat for Mr. Ahmad. I will go. So the question about rules and regulations. Well, if you're a politician, you will always ask for laws. And the German situation is that since many politicians were attacked, and we even had a murder case, the politicians have developed many laws, and they also have backed up the police and law executive structures to then keep it to show that the laws are even enacted on and placed on. So a lot of things has been done in that sphere, which is what the state can do. And I think a lot of things have become better, especially now that you have now a chance that if you go to a policeman, that he might understand what the problem is, and that he might or she might react, and that there might be prosecution of criminal hate speech, of criminal offenses in the internet. From my point of view, it's even more important to understand that about 90% of all kind of offenses are not really criminal, or not subject of the law, but they are covered by whatever freedoms we think are important, freedom of speech, but also the freedom of art, etc., etc. So also maybe something like the freedom of being stupid in some case. So I think the law can give a framework, and it's important to have something like red lines that not to cross, to show that. But it's not the most important thing to govern everyday life in the internet. So if you go back to the everyday internet life, then we have two other actors which are important. That are the platforms, and these are also what I call the owners of groups, or the administrators, or the moderators, or the people who then use the platforms for whatever purpose they have, and it's for them to set the rules, or better say, to set the tone of discussion. We have very, very, very interesting studies coming up showing how the influence of positive moderation could be. So it's like just setting the tone, not so much so focusing on the hater and the other, but just being love, just being nice, live love, if you would say. And you can do that as a moderator. And you can have a lot of power to do that, to have an influence about to keep your web space clean, to keep your environment safer.
Joanna, what are the pros and cons of regulation in the strict sense? What is your experience from Sri Lanka?
Okay, that's a very heavy question, a loaded question.
Make it light. Make it light.
Okay, so in Sri Lanka, regulation has taken the form of complete social media shutdowns. So, as I said, in 2018, there were violent attacks on Muslim communities, and that started on social media. It started with something as seemingly simple and innocent as a few posts about a Muslim restaurant owner placing birth control medication inside the food he was selling with the intention of inhibiting the majority ethnic group in the country from reproducing. So these posts, which had no factual base, went viral, and that escalated into attacks on that particular shop and other shops next to that shop. And then it spread to other parts of the country and turned into really violent attacks that took lives. So the government blocked social media for a period of 2 to 3 weeks and brought the situation under control. But that did not address the issue, because when the Easter attacks happened in 2019, we saw the same thing. Because the perpetrators of the attacks were connected to ISIS, there was a lot of hate online towards the Muslim community. And really, it set off a new wave of hate towards the Muslims that never really died and is still present. And we've also seen that during the pandemic with the issue of burial versus cremation. And that negative stereotype of a majority aligning this minority with this act of killing never went away. So again, the numbers show us that the hate towards the Muslim community is highest of all the minorities in Sri Lanka. So again, after the East attacks, the government blocked social media. So that is the regulation stance our government has taken. And again, through our research and specifically a partnership we have with Democracy Reporting International, we did an analysis of the formal legal frameworks that the government has used in the past and also in the recent past. To address hate speech on social media. But the analysis found that either they have interpreted that legal mechanism in an overly broad sense, or they have misused it because, because the government also has an agenda in addressing this type of hate speech, which because ethno-religious hate speech also has a political alignment in Sri Lanka. So it is not unbiased regulation in that sense. And then when it comes to alternative mechanisms for regulation, that is steps taken by civil society actors, range from writing an open letter to Facebook after the violence in 2018. And Facebook actually responded to that. They had a meeting in Sri Lanka with civil society actors. And we have seen over the past 2 years that they have taken some steps. The hate is still there. And not social media, but Facebook specifically has been used as a vector for hate speech over the past few years in a big way, but Facebook has taken steps. So they have expanded their language team, because a lot of the hate speech is not in English, and there are particular nuances in language that a mere translator will not catch. So they have expanded their language team, and through our work with researchers, we know that their Facebook's response rate has also increased when hate speech of this nature is flagged to them from Sri Lanka specifically. And they also now have a small team that is dedicated to handling issues on Sri Lanka. And those individuals are Sri Lankans themselves, and SRP has also networked with them and engaged with them, because it is valuable to have this relationship so that we can work together and also feed into their initiatives. Through the program also, we conducted a research. In fact, it was done by one of our teammates on regulatory frameworks in 8 different countries, Germany included. So she looked at it across a spectrum, from strong regulation to a more laissez-faire approach, like what we see in the US. So that Sri Lanka can learn from these different approaches. And through our work over the years, this research was done in 2019, and in the past year and also this year, we've found that approaches are not perfect, and they require really a multi-stakeholder approach, and not just government and civil society, but a public debate, which is what we've heard from Article 19 and ODI, and really collaboration, because regulation can't just be driven from the top down, but it has to involve all stakeholders, and especially those of us. I mean, everyone uses social media, or most people do. So it is our platform, and in theory, everyone has a voice on social media. So in a space where we all have a voice, we need to contribute to how we protect that space and ensure that it doesn't hurt others, as Björn also pointed out.
Yeah, very interesting. As Björn pointed out, he was a bit skeptical about state-run regulation, and at the end of the day, it's the individual behavior of each and every participant and user of social media. So, do you think we need a subject at school, social media? I mean, using social media is by now a cultural technique. Everybody, at least in an age below 30, let's say, I'm actually more a digital displaced person in that regard. But Joanna, is the school the right place to teach or to empower people, and should we work for a school subject usage of social media so that everybody can actually learn and train the proper behavior on social media? What do you think, Björn?
Okay, I'll answer the question just the aspect of gender for first, and then I come to school. Asked in the chat whether gender plays a role of online bullying, and what we found out is yes, it does, definitely. And we can say from our own counter-speech experience that women are running much higher risk of being attacked, and especially of being attacked sexually. So you will get, it's much easy. Well, there's much greater chance that the online hate will become sexualized and in a way especially nasty. I could say that unfortunately many women have more experience with that because of the society as it is. So they have also found ways of coping with it, but still it is a real big problem. And it is also, there's an intersectional perspective on it. So as Joanna pointed out, that Muslims are more exposed in Sri Lanka. They're also more exposed in in Germany and others. Or if you could say that if you're a transsexual Muslim women or whatever, this is a problem. And if we deal with this in our training by one. We try not to reproduce too much of stereotypes, discrimination, hate slur, and but it happens because we offer realistic role plays, and the core of our work is role plays, and so we have an eye on how to deal with how to talk about reproduction of these kind of slur, violence, etc. And we also try how to offer a safe place, in a role play, so that we can cover up, that we can not cover up, but that we can cope with any kind of well, I wouldn't say re-traumatization, but of personal crisis that can appear within role plays. So that's also now leading up to the question of school. Yes, of course, school has to do a lot of things, because what we find out is, what we know is that many young people, they feel very, very, they are very active in social media, so they have less barriers than we had. Like I remember when I wrote my first email, they just do it. But even if they just do it, they don't know what they're doing. And it's very important to give them a better understanding of the risks and also of the chances, but especially of the risks of being online and what they can do. So yes, it makes sense to offer them something well, it makes sense to have it in school, and it also makes sense, if I can address the next question, about for parents to deal with it. I mean, I think the most important thing for parents is to be close to what your kids are experiencing in cyberspace. Just, like having a 13-year-old daughter, I know it's not always being easy to be part of whatever they're doing on TikTok or so on, but yes, it's a balance of overprotecting them, and of being just, the kind of person that they can turn to if they run into problems, and to address it.
But there's probably also, let's say, generational gap, or a digital gap in terms of generation, and this is probably also somehow culturally determined. Joanna, how big is the gap in Sri Lanka, and is there a common strategy that we can, in terms of global exchange? Parents play an important role, but very often they don't know, or they don't even understand what's going on. But what's your approach there?
Okay, so first, to respond to your point about including social media in education, capacity building and increasing social media literacy is actually one of our alternative regulatory approaches for social media, and something that we have integrated in our partner initiatives. And the reason behind that is because through our analysis and through the work we've done, we found that while the number of young people on social media is very high, their level of social media literacy is not. So they know how to like something and share something and comment on something, but they don't really understand the significance or the consequences of what they're liking, commenting, or sharing, or their perception of, oh, I'm just clicking this little thumbs up icon, like, what is that going to do? But actually, if 100 or 1,000 of us thought that way, it has actually led to violence offline, just because 1,000 of us clicked the like button. So, and even when it comes to hashtagging, we found that a lot of youth don't understand what a hashtag does, because when you put in a hashtag, the more people who use that hashtag increases its where it will appear in a search engine. So if the hashtag could be seemingly innocent, but it might actually be nuanced or connote something that is not innocent, or make reference to something that is racist or sexist. And then in a search, when this keeps coming up, then you have a situation that escalates into hate, and that could escalate into offline violence. So that is why social media literacy and capacity building is so important, not just in school, but even beyond school. So we don't integrate this into school systems in Sri Lanka yet, but we have been working with youth at university level, and even those who are not in university anymore. So through these capacity building programs, they understand what hate speech is, what it can look like, the nuances, the fact that hate speech isn't, or violence online isn't very obvious. Even gender-driven hate speech, like something as simple as a post about what a girl is wearing or what she looks like, could be perceived as innocent, but it's not. So giving them that context and the tools, and cueing them to understand that simply liking something and sharing something can lead to violence is essential. And the other point
Joanna,
is, yes.
Is there any complementary capacity building for the parents? Do you know of any in Sri Lanka? Not necessarily from SRP, but from the Ministry of Education, or from... Could you imagine that something like this should happen? Also the question to Björn, how do you think? But first, Joanna.
Yeah, so yes, I was getting to the point on parents. So the short answer is no, there is no formal awareness or education program for parents, but there are NGOs and grassroots level organizations that are doing some really good work with regards to cyberbullying specifically, and gender-based hate speech in Sri Lanka. And I have personally attended some of those events, and it's really heartening to see that. And there are also parents who are involved in setting these up, because a lot of cyberbullying and gender-based hate speech is centered around shame. And in a culture such as ours, and in many Asian cultures which are shame-based, young people don't have the confidence to tell their parents someone is bullying me online, or someone is threatening me with nudes, or attacking my race, because they fear what their parents will say and how it will look to others in their community. So that's why having conversations around it, and also building awareness among parents, is so crucial, because as we have seen through government regulation, simply blocking something, or telling your kids to not be on social media is not the answer. When social media was banned in Sri Lanka, statistics show that user interaction was highest during the ban compared to just before the ban. That's what the numbers show. And it's not a small difference, it's hundreds of thousands. So parents need to understand the dynamics of social media and really be in that space, because saying no won't work, because the generation that is growing up after me and the generations to come, for them, social media is the norm. I started using social media when I was in university, but for younger generations, I mean, as young as 2 and 3, they're watching videos on YouTube. So it's so crucial to understand the dynamics of a platform and how it works, so that children and parents can work together really to address the issue.
Björn, I understood that parents are also a target group of what Lovestorm is doing. How do you assess the role of parents, and what can be done actually in terms of teaching or educating young people, or even to say that very strongly to prevent violence from happening. Is there an approach?
Oh, well, I'm not so sure whether you understood Love right in this perspective.
Okay.
Well, let's put me say something first. I think online hate is not a specific use problem. A lot of the haters that we expect that are older, and a lot of the victims are older, and it's not the way as it was then, like 20 years ago, when only the young people were in the internet. So this is not just use. And what we're doing is we're working a lot with adults. Yes, and some of the adults are parents, but we're not working specifically with parents on the topic how they can help their kids. But we work with the parents in this respect about how they can be a citizen of the internet in a love storm way, and how they can be a good example, if you could say, about how to protect other people, and how that they can have the capacities and the competences that they need if they know what to do in cyberbullying beyond their own space, or in how to counter and how to react on hate speech online. If they don't scroll on if they see an offense, but if they react, if they are a good example, and if they are competent and steady in their own reaction about cyberspace, about cyber hate, then I think they will have the possibility to talk with their kids and to help the kids going along with that. If they have no idea what they would do when they see something like that, if they have no moral guideline, oh, this is an attack and I should do something about it, then how can they forward this to their kids?
Mm. Yeah, thank you very much. Now we are kind of coming on the last mile, and I would invite the audience, if there are any questions or comments, please make yourself visible in terms of typing something into the chat, so we can respond or take your comment up in our discussion. I hope the questions which have occurred so far about the gender dimension and the role of parents have been sufficiently addressed and even answered. So if you have some burning issue, please come out and let us know that we can see. And while you are still typing, I would turn again to our panelists, Joanna and Björn. We have talked before last week in some kind of preparation. What are the similarities and the options for similar approaches compared between Sri Lanka and Germany? Do you see that there is some linkage in terms of analysis and research, but even maybe in terms of cooperation? Do you see any hooks that we can use for this? Joanna, what you want to start?
Sorry, I think Björn was speaking.
Oh, sorry. I think our names are so close to each other. I really often understand Björn and it's Jonathan. But I can answer, of course.
Yeah. One of you.
Yeah. The one thing I think definitely is that I know that Joanna is doing training, and I know that you are training that you offer a lot of things. And obviously, in a way, the online training room that we have may be of some value, but that's Joanna to decide. And the other thing is, well, I think what we lack in When Love Storm is really about how to go into the influencer sphere, about how to reach out to youth who are online and who are influential online, and who we don't have the money to pay. Because I remember the talk with my kids when she was at, well, they are really being paid for showing their products, so it's just a commercial. Yes, it is. But I definitely think that that's something how we can make young people to become more ambassadors of peace in a way that will help us to spread nonviolence in a way. So that's where I see a point. Joanna.
Thank you, Björn. Joanna.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I mean, I would kind of echo that what Love Storm is doing is really valuable, and we need an independent initiative or initiatives like that in Sri Lanka, because we don't have any independent initiatives doing what Love Storm does. So the type of work Love Storm does happens through INGOs or international cooperation programs like ours, or at a grassroots level where it's not always very consistent, and they often don't have all of the tools or the expertise they need. So definitely, I mean, when I found out about Love Storm, I actually looked you up, and it was really great to see that that such initiatives exist in Germany, where there is also a strong government regulation aspect over social media. As I said before, we have also looked at Germany's formal regulation system, and for Sri Lanka, that is problematic, and civil society has raised concerns because the government has been known to restrict freedom of speech. So we are, well, what would be more ideal would be more Love Storm type initiatives that promote citizen action and also more responsible citizenship on social media. So yes, that's how I see it.
Okay, thank you. There is one question or two questions there. A very long comment. I would quickly go into this question from and he touches on something that we have discussed earlier on, whether counter speech or love storms has maybe an opposite effect in terms of people feeling confirmed if somebody responds to their hateful speech. What is your experience, Joanna and Björn? Is it better to be silent if somebody is offensive?
So as I said earlier, that was actually our partner strategy on this page. That was, when I say user generated, it was, there are actually over 12,000 followers, and they're all young people contributing and sort of managing this page. So managing this page on peace building. So when there was hateful content on that page, and we as a program were actually very stressed out and flagged this to the partner, their response was to not react to most of it, really, as in to not directly attack and not directly react, and engage with the haters by posting a counter comment saying something like, this is not the truth, or don't say this, or respect each other. So none of that. So my short answer is yes, I think sometimes not reacting at all in that online space is better, not reacting in a direct sense. But you can react in an indirect way by, for example, if the hate is coming from a piece of fake news, then posting content that fact checks that, or scientifically based, if it's related to COVID, sharing those posts. Or, I mean, not just COVID, on any topic really, posting a factual sort of response, not as a direct counter, but on your page so that it circulates among your circles. And you can even alert your circles that this hate is going around, it's unfounded or it's disrespectful, and then countering it through a fact-based post or a positive post about that community. If it's race-related, can be a way of indirectly reacting so that hate doesn't just go unchecked.
Mm. Yeah, what do you teach in terms of reacting or not reacting?
Well, actually, we teach quite the opposite. So it's clear, as Joanna saying yes to ignoring, I say no to ignoring. Okay. Because well, I believe in impact, and I believe in looking at systems. And the one very important thing is, if you say don't feed the troll, you're just taking a very small part of the system. The system of hate online always includes the person who is attacked, the target. It includes the person who is attacking, the hater, and also includes, in most cases, hundreds of people who are watching. And so when Lovestorm says we have these 3 rules, first, how to empower the target, second, how to mobilize the bystanders to show pro-social behavior, and third is only then to limitate, to set borders, to set limits to the attackers in a non-violent way. It says, because we say within the system, the very important people are the target persons and the bystanders, and we have to concentrate on them. So it's more important to do something about this than how to ignore that. Because then what I'm saying about impact is that by all things that we know, is that hate is very loud and support is very, very, very silent or lacking, and this leaves the impact with the persons who are attacked, but also with the persons who are just watching it, that the whole world is against you, or the whole world is pro-hate, and that's not true. But the silent majority, as we say in Germany, is not doing any help if they stay silent. So we have to show the other way around. So if you think something is too stupid and you just don't want to give more power to the algorithm feeding the negative hate, or whatever you think, you don't want to give them your attention, then at least do something like active ignoring. Active ignorance means you just continue, but you take the space for your constructive behavior, and you mobilize others to show other pro-social behavior instead of leaving the space for the others. So sometimes not reacting at all could be better, but I don't really imagine that this conditions where this would be.
Yeah, it's very interesting to have this very different opinions and views on it. And Joanna, before I give the floor to you, an assumption, because there seems that there is no general answer to this question. Could it be that it's a matter of cultural and communicative pattern in countries that brings you to different assessments of how to best react to this, Joanna? Is it?
Yes, so actually that's what I wanted to say, and also in response to Björn, we are in no way saying, or I'm in no way saying ignore the hate, but in terms of reacting and how you react, the response has to be strategic and measured. So that's why I said we didn't react directly, but we did react indirectly by posting fact-based comment, by posting positive stories about the community that was being targeted. So the hate wasn't ignored, or it might have appeared to have been ignored, but it actually wasn't. And one example is, there are so many, and also personal examples. The sister of one of our colleagues actually responded aggressively well, she didn't respond aggressively, but she responded to aggressive hate. And it had an offline effect. She owned a flower shop, and her shop was actually attacked. And this is in the center of the capital, where it was safe. And what was worse was that the neighboring cake shop asked her to evacuate and leave the premises, and they were actually renting the shop to her. They didn't want her to rent anymore because she was attacked, and she was attacked for doing nothing really, just because she responded to a post. So I raised this example to show that really how we react has to be strategic and measured, because the haters, I mean, they take it offline. And that is also why context is so important, because hate speech is always context-based, or negative commentary is always context-based. A conversation online always has a context, and it's important to respond according to that context. And something really important that, Björn, you also raised is having an offline strategy or an offline approach. And we've talked about this so much in the past hour. We have talked about what we've done online, but we've also very sort of, it's almost like second nature, mentioned what is happening in the offline realm. And a lot of these issues that are expressed online start offline and are connected to our societies and our communities. So we also need to look at the root of the issue. So even with gender-based violence, where that comes from in an offline context, and then carries into the online realm.
Thank you, Joanna, to giving me the keyword, because in the next post we have this question of the root causes, and asking what, in your assessment, Björn and Joanna, are actually the reasons or the motivations for the perpetrators. And he is warning against regulating too much and rather addressing the root causes. What's your experience in regard to, in your research or in your discussions, Björn? What did you find out about motivation of perpetrators? Yeah.
Okay. Well, we know that there are very broad motivations of personal. Some are more personal frustrations. Some are just you just had a bad day. Some of you, something is triggering. As I said, okay, when I said in the beginning, it's not you, but they want to hit you. They're the former ex-girlfriend or whatever. Things like that play a role, unfortunately, or for the degradation or whatever. So. But also some political organization. I mean, there has been a study now already 5 years old or something like that, showing that like 50% of the most hateful comments in the study were coming from 5% of the or less, no, 50%. So haters can be organized, and they can be very active, and they can show they can they can take the space if you leave them, if you leave it to them. So yes, the root cause, dealing with the root cause is important. I, as a pedagogue, say that yes, you have to deal with that. But on the other hand, I, as a political person or as a citizen in this democracy, say, well, it's even more important to don't give them the space to expand and to look alike as they are a majority, because that is also one thing which powers haters, is if they have the feeling that they are the mob, and if they have the feeling that they are the stronger, if they have the feeling that they are the majority, and this fantasy of power empowers them. So I don't want to give them this impression. So by just saying, well, nothing against you, but I don't agree with your position, I can also I take them the power and the fuel that fuels the hate of, I'm great and I can now go on and be the big guy, and these won't say this word, but this is empowering them. And so dealing with the root causes has also to do something with not giving them the big space, but do that in personal context, but not online in the broad.
Yeah, thank you, Björn. We are approaching the end of our discussion, but Joanna, maybe a short answer to this motivational question. In a nutshell, what did you find out?
Yeah, so as I said before, context is everything. So the motivation of perpetrators varies based on the context and based on the type of hate. So that is why we really need to invest in research and take the time to monitor and evaluate, because all of the haters can't be put into one bucket. So context is everything, and understanding your target groups and understanding where exactly that hate is coming from is essential, because again, it might be a similar kind of, it might be sexist hate messages or gender-based hate, but someone who is 13 years, for instance, might be engaging in it by blackmailing his girlfriend with a nude. But then there might be someone in their 30s who is a predator or a pedophile. So the motivations differ really based on the subject, on the person, on their age, on their national, cultural context. All of those factors have to be studied. So we can't take it in a general sense. And the other aspect is that I would respectfully disagree with them that negative content spreads faster than positive. That's not true. And there are numbers to show that positive content has outweighed negative content in the case of the research we did following the Easter Sunday attacks. And that's just one example. So I would say it works both ways. But again, what appears on the surface is that the hate spreads faster or that the fake news spreads faster. So again, we really need to spend time researching and understanding the social media context. And I would also say that this problem of hate speech isn't going to go away, because it is a human behavior related problem and it is rooted in society. Before social media was around, wars were still fought and people were still nasty to each other. So I wouldn't, as much as I would love for social media to be a space that is free of hate, I don't think it will ever be, however much we invest in efforts and however much we do. But having said that, that is why we need to keep at it and why we need to have a multi-stakeholder approach that involves government, that involves us as citizens, that involves the think tanks, that involves the media, that involves the NGOs, the INGOs, the development workers, because it requires a concerted all-round effort to address this issue and keep it under control. Because in some cases, prosecution will be an avenue that we can tap into, but in some cases it might not be. In some countries it might not be. So as Ben said, keeping the root causes in mind is essential, and that is what we also focus on in our work, and understanding that it's not just a problem that is limited to this online space and that will go away if social media goes away. It is also an offline human centric problem.
Yeah, this was a very important point, and looking at the time ticking off, I think we are slowly coming to a close of our discussion. As you see in the chat, there are now various information being shared. First of all, there is from the hint to a publication of the Danish Prevention Council on the role of parents. Thank you very much for this. We have posted the addresses of Lavstorm and Hamle, and if you scroll up the chat, you will find the website of SRP, where Joanna is working. And yeah, I think what Joanna said last, that it's not only something which is going on in the digital world, but it's actually going on in the real world, or the digital world is actually part of the real world, so to speak. Social media are part of our daily life, and yeah, I think today's discussion didn't show the right solution or the one and only solution, but has highlighted some of the challenges that we are facing all over the world with the same manifestations of social media. And I would like to thank the panelists, Joanna and Björn, for sharing their knowledge, their insight, and their also the assessment. And I think through contacting the various websites, we can be in touch with one another, and also the participants of today's meeting can be in touch with our panelists. And by this, we have hopefully contributed a little bit to international exchange and cooperation. And yeah, I think our time is up. And again, thank you very much, Joanna, Björn, for sharing, and also to all the participants and attendants for the attention, and also for the questions that you have put forward and enriched our discussion. And yeah, a last greeting also to Shatha, who unfortunately couldn't make it today, but she would probably have also contributed new aspects. Anyway, thank you very much. And last but not least, thank you to Lisa, who has pulled the strings behind and made this session a good session. Thank you very much, and all the best to you, and have a good day. Bye-bye.